my name is Nick Naz, and I'm very excited to be joined with Professor Dr. Abdul Sater as we talk a little bit about COVID-19 vaccines, specifically the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna vaccine. Dr. Abdul Sater is a professor in the Faculty of Health at York University, and his research includes several avenues such as identifying novel regulators of inflammation and investigating the molecular mechanism through which different exercise regimens regulate the immune response, just to name a couple. Dr. Sater's affiliation include Canadian Society for Immunology, International Society of Exercise and Immunology, and Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology. Thank you so much for being here today as we tackle a few of the misinformation and questions that some may have. As we previously talked about, there has been a lot of misinformation, as you so wonderfully put, spreading like wildfire, and among many different platforms and dimensions such as social media, word of mouth, opinions, and even news article titles. I mentioned this last one because just a couple days ago, I was scrolling through CBC News and I came across the following article title: Reports of seniors falling ill or dying after getting a dose of COVID-19 vaccine. And then later it said, this may not tell the full story. So if the readers did not actually maybe read a little bit into the article, they might not understand that the purpose of this was not to put down or talk negatively regarding vaccination, but there's been a whole ton of incidences via media outlets and news outlets that I've come across that maybe they wanted to use a more eye-catching title, but it could be hugely misleading in my opinion.
Yeah, so, absolutely. These are what, obviously everyone calls them clickbaits, right? You see that, and then if it's something you already think about it, so okay, click on it, and most people don't even actually read the full story. And then all they do is like screenshot it, right? And then send it via all these, whatever social media sharing. And I get them. I'm on WhatsApp or something, and I get people sending me, hey, look, see, it does this. And, and it's worse if it's coming from a credible, news agency.
So my purpose with this was to hopefully contribute a little bit with the correct information, and of course research is available. However, it might be via wordy and lengthy medical journals with vocabulary that even myself might not be familiar with. So hopefully with this we can make it a little bit more digestible for some.
Happy to help any way I can.
Awesome. So I crowdsourced a little bit and I asked some peers, friends, and family some burning questions they might have, or some contradictory, conflicting ideas that they were wondering about. So Dr. Abdul Sater, to start us off, what are the main components of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, and how do they protect individuals against COVID-19?
So these two vaccines are different than most other vaccines. They're mRNA, which is we're not going to go into molecular biology here, but everybody knows about the nucleic acids, that the coding, or the DNA that we have that codes for proteins, right? Mm-hmm. So it's the genetic code that we all have, and that's how our cells can make proteins. Viruses, much like bacteria, much like all organisms, use that same genetic code. They use a genetic code to be able to make protein. Now, some DNA cannot be translated directly into proteins, so you need that transcript, that intermediate, which is called an mRNA, messenger RNA. So it's the messenger that you take a DNA to be able to translate it into a protein. So it's like that intermediate, right? Same, our proteins, our cells do the same thing. They also take the DNA, make a messenger RNA, they make a protein. Some viruses, like the COVID-19, it's not the virus is called SARS-CoV-2, but that's the virus that causes COVID-19, is a single-stranded mRNA. It's not mRNA. It's a single-stranded RNA virus, and that RNA codes for all the proteins that the virus needs to be able to infect the cell, and make more copies of itself. That's the purpose of a virus, is to make more copies of itself, right? So it has a relatively large RNA transcript that is about 23,000 base pairs, right? Mm-hmm. Some of those, different regions of that RNA code for different proteins. Some proteins give the virus its obviously shape, gives it its shell if you want, right? Its capsid, and gives it these spike proteins. That's why it's called coronavirus, because it looks like a crown, right? Mm-hmm. So it gives it these spike proteins, and it uses these spike proteins, and among many other things on the surface of the virus. It's not just the only protein. but it uses those spike proteins to be able to enter into the cell, right? So it binds a receptor on our cells, and that gives it the ability to enter into the cell. Once it's inside the cell, now it unloads its RNA and starts using the cell's own machinery to make proteins. Mm-hmm. And some of those proteins allow the virus to make copies of itself, and that's that purpose, make copies of itself, and then it kills the cell and leaves and infect nearby cells, and that's how it spreads. So with this, with these two vaccines, what they did is they took the message, the part of the RNA from the virus that only codes for that spike protein, only the one that makes that corona shape and allows it to enter into the cell. It doesn't have any of the remaining proteins of the virus. And the idea is to get it into the cell, and this way that our cells will make only that spike protein, none of the rest of the virus. And that is a foreign protein. Our immune system has not seen it before, so it will perceive it as foreign, and then it will make antibodies against it. And that's how you get prepared in case in the future you get infected. I think I went a little bit off topic of your question. Maybe that's a follow-up question, but just the idea is that what is that mRNA? Because people are scared, right? Of that mRNA. What is it? It's just it's just a part of our natural thing that we all have in our body anyway. So it doesn't really. It's not dangerous. So that's one, and the mRNA, that's one component of the vaccine. Right. The other component is that RNA, in general, all RNAs are very fragile molecules, right? They are easily digested by tons of enzymes that are present everywhere, right? So they're known. I mean, in the lab, when we work with RNA, we have to be extremely cautious. We use special tips, special pipettes. We clean up everywhere. They're very easily destroyed. Right. So if they were just going to deliver the RNA as it is, that won't work. It cannot enter into the cell. Second, it's too labile, too fragile, right? So they coat it with these lipid nanoparticles, right? That gives it a little bit more stability and allow the RNA to enter into the cell, because it's, RNA is inherently it cannot penetrate the plasma membrane. You coat it with a lipid molecule. Lipids nicely cross the plasma membrane, which is also a bilayer of phospholipids. So now it can cross and then enter into the cell and start being translated into a protein. And then additional, standard non-medicinal like sugars and salts and whatever, just to make the vaccine matching the pH and the acidity, if you want. I'm trying to use non-scientific terms, so the acidity and the salt concentration of the body and sugars, and just to keep the vaccine, the RNA alive, right? Not destroyed.
So from what I understand is that an individual cannot actually get COVID-19 from the vaccine, but rather it's presenting our body with something that looks like the infection so that our immune system could learn how to make natural protection.
Absolutely not, yes. So you cannot, it's not possible to get COVID, the actual disease, from the vaccine. The vaccine, as I mentioned earlier, and I guess that's a good way, to do that. It's only one small part that codes for one single protein out of the 20-something proteins that the virus needs, right, to be able to become a virus, right? The virus needs to be able to replicate that RNA. So it needs enzymes to do that. Those are not present in the vaccine. It's literally only that spike, right, of the entire virus. So that's kind of like you saying you have a computer, right? Mm-hmm. But then you took a piece of the key of the keyboard, right? And you say, I have a computer. No, that's not a computer. That's not going to compute anything. That's not going to be able to calculate anything. It's nothing. It's just a key, right? So that's the kind of analogy I'm thinking of.
You always have the best analogies. That's awesome.